My fiancée was more concerned about being on my $1 million policy than being a wife. Her daughter called me a walking ATM. That's when I knew they didn't lose a man, they lost their golden ticket. Hello, Reddit I plus here. I met Naomi at a charity event hosted by a friend from business school. She was charming, beautiful in that grounded girl-next-door way, and carried herself like someone who had known struggle and risen above it. I liked that. She was a single mother, raising a bright, lively teenage daughter named Kayla. It wasn't long before we started dating seriously. At the time, I was just beginning to see real success in my career. My tech consultancy had landed a couple of big contracts, and I was finally seeing 7 figures in my business account. I'd come from nothing, a kid raised by a tired single mother, working 2 jobs to keep food on the table, so I never let money change who I was. Naomi, at first, seemed to appreciate that. She said she admired my drive, told me she loved that I stayed humble, and when I proposed after 2 years of dating, she cried and said yes. But things started to shift not long after the engagement. It began subtly. Naomi would bring up my life insurance policy. Not once, not twice, but regularly. You should really think about updating your beneficiaries, she'd say while folding laundry or casually over dinner. You know, now that you're going to have a family. I didn't think much of it at first. I mean, she wasn't wrong. I did have a sizable life insurance policy, $1 million, put in place years ago when I started my company. At the time, my younger brother was the beneficiary. We were close, and he'd helped me when no one else would. But Naomi's reminders kept coming. Eventually, it was less of a suggestion and more of a push. It's not about the money, she said once. It's about security. What if something happened to you? Wouldn't you want us protected? I agreed in principle, but something in her tone that day stuck with me. Not fear, not love, but calculation. Then came Kayla. She was 16, bright but sarcastic in that way that teenagers sometimes are. I tried to be patient, tried to be a role model. I paid for her private school tuition, helped her with her college prep, even bought her a used car for her birthday. One day I overheard her on the phone with a friend. She thought I wasn't home. He's loaded. Like, loaded, she said, giggling. Mom hit the jackpot. He pays for everything. He's basically a walking ATM. I froze. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Teenagers say stupid things. Maybe it was a bad joke. But then the pattern became too obvious to ignore. I noticed Naomi and Kayla would go shopping right after my deposit notifications came through. She had access to my schedule and my finances in a way I hadn't even realized I'd allowed. They weren't careless. They were coordinated. I started testing things. I told Naomi I'd be traveling for business but stayed in town instead. Sure enough, she and Kayla took a weekend trip. Spa, hotel, luxury stores. All charged to the card I'd given her for emergencies. That same week, Naomi brought up the life insurance policy again, and this time, she was direct. Look, it just makes sense. We're going to be married. God forbid anything happened to you. Wouldn't you want Kayla and me to be okay? That was it. Something inside me turned cold. It wasn't the request. It was the sense that I was being cornered. That love had been a tool. That behind the sweet smiles and long talks about the future was a quiet, calculated goal. Become the beneficiary. Secure the bag. I didn't argue. I just nodded and said, let me think about it. That night, I contacted my attorney. I had him do 2 things. Quietly revise my will and draft a new insurance policy with specific legal protections that ensured Naomi couldn't touch a cent unless we were married and remained so for at least 5 years. Then I started making quiet moves. I took back control of my finances. I created a new LLC to manage my wealth. I stopped depositing into the joint account and redirected expenses through a financial manager. A month later, Naomi confronted me. I feel like you're pulling away, she said. Like you don't trust me anymore. I looked at her, long and hard. I wanted to believe she was just scared. That maybe she had loved me once. I'm just being careful, I replied. We both know money complicates things. A week later, I called off the engagement. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She got angry. You led us on, she hissed. You knew what we needed. You can't just throw us away. That word, needed. Not loved, not wanted. I stayed calm. Naomi, I wanted a partner. Not someone who sees me as a payout. She left the next day. Took everything she could without breaking the law. Kayla didn't even say goodbye. I guess ATMs don't deserve thank yous. A few months passed. I moved on. Quietly. Without drama. I refocused on work. Spent time with people who actually knew me, who never asked what I could buy them. Then, one evening, I got a call from Naomi. She didn't sound angry anymore. She sounded desperate. I made a mistake, she said. I miss you. Kayla does too. I let her talk. Let her spin the story. She tried to convince me that things had just gotten out of hand, that the money talk had been fear, not greed, that she'd always loved me. When she finally stopped, I asked a simple question. Would you still want me if I canceled that $1 million policy tomorrow? The silence on the line was louder than any answer. I hung up. They didn't lose a man. They lost their golden ticket. And I finally stopped living like I needed to be loved to be worth something. I thought that phone call would be the last I heard from Naomi. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, a letter showed up at my office. Not an email. An actual letter. Handwritten, on expensive stationery. Her name signed in that swooping, careful cursive she used on holiday cards and Instagram captions. Marcus, I know you think I used you. I know you believe I only cared about your money. I'm not going to lie. I got carried away. We both did. But does that mean none of it was ever real? Not the nights we stayed up talking? Not the holidays we spent together? Does one mistake erase all of it? I raised Kayla on my own for over a decade. I've never leaned on a man in my life. But when I met you, I felt safe for the first time. That scared me. Yes, I made some terrible choices, but you made a promise. You were supposed to be family. How do you walk away from family like that? If this is about the policy, tear it up. Remove my name. I don't care about the money anymore. I just want us back. Naomi, I read the letter twice, and for a moment, just a moment, I felt a flicker of guilt. The kind that hits when someone reminds you of memories they know still live somewhere in your chest. The kind they weaponize, but something was off. I had never promised her anything more than love and honesty, and I had kept both until I realized they weren't being returned. She was rewriting the past, making my boundary feel like betrayal. The next day, I didn't respond. I shredded the letter. I told myself, if it was real, she wouldn't have needed a policy to stay. If it was real, her daughter wouldn't have called me an ATM behind closed doors. That should have been the end. But then, the smear campaign began. At first it was subtle. Mutual acquaintances started pulling away. A friend from the charity board stopped returning my calls. A business connection told me in private, hey man, there's talk that you ghosted Naomi after using her and her kid to clean up your image. That you exploited the single mom narrative for branding. I was stunned. Apparently Naomi was telling people I had marketed our relationship for optics. That I used her as a humanizing story in business interviews, then dumped her once I cashed in on the sympathy. I didn't even know how to respond. I hadn't said a word about our relationship publicly. I hadn't even posted about her, and yet, the narrative was spreading. I finally got a direct message on social media from Naomi's cousin, a woman I'd only met twice. I don't know what happened between you two, but dragging Naomi's name through the mud just because you're a CEO now, that's low. You never deserved her. That was the moment I realized. They weren't just sad it was over. They were furious I didn't come crawling back. They expected me to feel guilty for choosing self-respect over emotional blackmail. I could have clapped back. I could have pulled out screenshots, bank records, voice messages. The receipts were endless, but I didn't. Instead, I did something more dangerous. I said nothing, let the storm run out of air. The silence drove them crazy. Naomi began sending voicemails, carefully balanced between pleading and threatening. You really want to play this game, Marcus? Do you think people won't believe me over you? You're a man with power. All I have to do is say the word, and everyone will believe you manipulated me and my daughter. I'll tell them you isolated us, controlled us, that you dangled money over our heads like a leash. She didn't say it outright, but I knew what she meant. Me too. Emotional abuse, financial manipulation. It wasn't just a warning, it was a test. She wanted to see if she still had a hold on me. I sat with it for a day. Then I forwarded the message to my attorney and added a note. If she continues, we go to court. Full documentation. NDA enforcement. I'm done. I never heard from her directly again, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel the weight of it all. Even with the silence, the damage lingered. Some people I'd known for years looked at me sideways. Some clients avoided personal conversation altogether. But the truth? The people who mattered stuck around. They asked questions. They listened. They didn't assume the worst. And those who ghosted me after whispers? They were never for me to begin with. Months passed. And then, one evening, as I was walking out of a dinner event, I saw her, Naomi, standing by her car, looking unsure, not sad, not angry, just hollow. I hadn't seen her since the breakup. She stepped forward and said, "You look good." I nodded. "You too." She forced a smile. "Kayla's in college now, on scholarship. Things are tight, but we're okay." I said nothing. Then came the real reason she was there. "I know I made mistakes," she said, "but I also know you're not cold. You were never cold. Could you ever really walk away from people who just wanted to be part of your life? That was it. The final card. The final test. I met her eyes and said calmly, "You didn't want to be part of my life. You wanted access to what I built." "There's a difference." She said nothing. I walked away. And this time, she didn't follow. Today, I live quietly. No drama. No performative relationships. I've learned the difference between love and loyalty. One can be felt. The other is proven. And when people ask if I regret it, if I miss her, I say this: they didn't lose a man. They lost their golden ticket. But more importantly, I found my peace. And that's worth more than $1 million policy ever was.